Older woman, take a moment and hear this. There are 5 brutal truths about having a boyfriend after 60 that people rarely speak about openly. I'm going to lay them out honestly. If you stay until the end, you will come to realize something important. You are not too selective, you are not too old, and you are certainly not difficult. You are simply realizing truths that many women only understand much later in life. By the time we reach the 5th point, you will also understand a hidden psychological pattern that causes many older women to remain in relationships that exhaust them, and how you can completely avoid falling into that trap. Once you recognize it, it becomes impossible to ignore. I'm speaking not only as a man but also as a therapist who has listened to countless women in your stage of life, widowed, divorced, or never married, who have all shared a similar regret. If I had understood this sooner, I would never have allowed him back into my life. You are not meant to serve as someone's caretaker, financial support, or emotional outlet. So let's explore why, after 60, you might actually be better off without a boyfriend. Pay special attention to the 3rd and 4th points, those are often the ones that deeply shift perspectives. First, let me be clear, this is not about rejecting love or companionship. It's about refusing to sacrifice your peace, health, and self-respect just to say you are in a relationship. There's a big difference between having a true partner and taking on a responsibility, between sharing a relationship and managing a burden. Now, let's begin with the first brutal truth. Reason 1, the boyfriend role can limit your emotional growth. At this stage in life, the term boyfriend often no longer reflects who you truly are. It carries a light, youthful tone. While your life experience is anything but light, you've faced loss, heartbreak, illness, caregiving, and many personal challenges. The issue is that the boyfriend label often brings with it immature expectations, which can keep you from expressing your full emotional depth. For example, I once worked with a woman in her late 60s, let's call her Sophie. Her partner insisted on being called her boyfriend because terms like partner made him feel older. At first, it seemed harmless, but over time, a pattern became clear. He enjoyed the benefits of her commitment, her care, loyalty, and support, without taking on the emotional responsibility of a true partner. Whenever she tried to discuss the future, he would brush it off by saying, "Why complicate things? Let's just enjoy what we have." This allowed him to avoid growth, depth, and accountability. As a result, Sophie began to hold back parts of herself. She stopped sharing her deeper concerns, about aging, finances, and spiritual needs. She told me, "He doesn't like serious conversations. He says I'm being negative." Here's the brutal truth, many men prefer a simplified version of you rather than embracing the full depth of who you've become, and the boyfriend label can make it easier for them to keep things that way. So ask yourself this. In your last relationship, were you able to show your whole self, your pain, wisdom, and fears, or did you feel pressured to stay light, easygoing, and undemanding just to keep him? Reason 2, your energy, health, and personal safety matter more than ever. After 60, your energy becomes a valuable resource. Every decision you make carries weight. At this stage, having a boyfriend can easily turn into a demanding emotional role, one that offers no real reward, appreciation, or long-term security. Think about how these relationships often begin. For many women, it starts off feeling positive, companionship, conversation, shared moments. But over time, the dynamic can quietly shift. Take one of my clients, we will call her Mary. She met a man in his 70s who initially seemed warm and engaging. They talked for hours, and he told her she had rescued him from loneliness. But gradually, she found herself becoming his emotional support system. He would call late at night when he couldn't sleep, unloading complaints about his past marriage, his children, his health, and his regrets. I asked her a simple question, after speaking with him, "Do you feel uplifted or drained?" She hesitated, then broke down in tears. "Drained every time," she admitted. "But I feel guilty ignoring his calls. What if he needs me?" That's how these situations develop, your compassion turns into a burden you carry. And it's not only emotional strain. There are also real concerns about physical safety. Meeting new people, often through online platforms or in unfamiliar settings, can involve risks, especially at a time when your body may be more vulnerable and recovery takes longer. You have spent years building a life that finally belongs to you. So be honest with yourself, does having a boyfriend now increase your sense of security, or does it bring more worry? Does it add peace or create pressure? Reason 3, a boyfriend can limit your growth to what he is comfortable with. After 60, life isn't just about aging, it's about evolving. Many women begin to rediscover themselves beyond the roles they once held as wives, mothers, or caregivers. You may feel drawn to learning, healing, spirituality, creativity, or new experiences. It's a time of expansion. However, this is where many relationships begin to struggle, because your growth can unsettle the other person. I recall a woman who came to me after ending a long marriage. She felt a new sense of freedom. She joined a book club, started therapy, and began exploring her past, her habits, and her aspirations. Eventually, she met a man who was very interested in her, at first. Initially, he admired her progress. But as she became more self-aware, more confident, and clearer about her needs, the man's attitude changed. He began making remarks like, "You used to be so easygoing," or, "You're overanalyzing everything now." What he really wanted was the version of her he was comfortable with, not the person she was becoming. At this stage of life, your journey is often about bringing together all parts of yourself, including those you once suppressed just to get through life. But when you enter a relationship, especially with someone who lacks emotional depth, you may start holding yourself back again without even realizing it. You might stop sharing what you're learning because it leads to conflict. You might skip activities you enjoy to avoid making him feel excluded. You might hesitate to explore new interests out of guilt. In doing so, you begin to limit your own growth to match his level of comfort. This is one of the quieter heartbreaks I often witness, women standing on the edge of deep personal transformation, but choosing a relationship instead of fully choosing themselves. So ask yourself honestly, if I never entered another relationship, how much could I grow? What parts of me would finally have the freedom to exist? Reason 4, the true cost, both financial and emotional, is higher than it appears. By the time you reach 60, you've already invested heavily in life, raising families, maintaining relationships, working, and caring for others. You understand that everything comes with a price. The brutal truth is that many older women don't fully recognize how costly having a boyfriend can be. At first, the expenses seem minor. You spend money on outings, gifts, communication, and transportation. You begin adjusting your routine to suit his, staying up later than you should, eating at irregular times, or traveling when your body would benefit more from rest. Then, the stakes can grow. You may allow him to stay in your home, temporarily, add his name to things for convenience, or gradually take on more financial responsibility because his situation is unstable. Some women have shared stories like, "He moved in just for a short time, but years later, he's still here contributing nothing, and I feel guilty asking him to leave." You didn't spend decades building your home, your finances, and your independence just to support someone else's lifestyle. But the cost isn't only financial, it's emotional as well. Your emotional energy is limited, and investing it in someone who cannot meet you at your level can be draining. You may find yourself constantly tired, not because of age, but because of emotional exhaustion. At this stage, your peace of mind is one of your most valuable assets. Anything you allow into your life should protect it, not diminish it. Reason 5, you deserve meaningful, wholehearted love, not partial attention. Here's a painful truth that many men won't openly admit: some are drawn to older women not out of respect for their wisdom, but because they assume these women will accept less and ask for less. They believe you may fear being alone, and they rely on that belief. Society often reinforces the idea that at your age, you should feel grateful for any romantic attention. But that belief is simply not true. When you enter a relationship out of fear of loneliness, you begin to teach yourself that your own presence is not enough. You reinforce the idea that you are incomplete without someone else. Each time you tolerate disappointment and stay anyway, that emotional wound deepens. This is the trap, mistaking occasional comfort for genuine companionship. You end up exchanging your deeper need, to be truly seen, valued, and understood, for small, inconsistent gestures of attention. I recall a woman who stayed for years with a man who clearly stated he did not want a serious commitment. She kept hoping he would eventually change. She once said, "He doesn't treat me the way I truly want, but I'm afraid that if I leave, I'll be alone forever." At one point, I asked her, "What if this stage of your life isn't about being chosen by someone else but about choosing yourself?" That question shifted something in her. She had never considered it that way before. You deserve a kind of love that meets you deeply and fully, not someone who shows up halfway out of convenience, boredom, or need. And here is the key realization: when you refuse to take on the roles of caretaker, financial provider, or emotional support system for a boyfriend, you create space for something far more meaningful. That could be deep friendships, a supportive community, spiritual fulfillment, or, on rare occasions, a truly mature and balanced partnership. So the real question isn't, should I have a boyfriend after 60? Instead, ask yourself, what form of love truly aligns with the woman I am today? If that answer is a peaceful, independent life without a romantic partner, that is not failure, it is wisdom. And if, one day, someone comes into your life who brings calm instead of stress, respects your boundaries, encourages your growth, and does not rely on you to take care of him, then you can choose that relationship from a place of confidence, not fear. Until then, it is perfectly valid to say no. It is perfectly valid to choose not to have a boyfriend. And it is more than okay to protect your heart as something deeply valuable.